Zimbabwe.com. Zimbabwe.com. Anogaya mari.
Kambakwe uyo anotara mari anogaya mari. Garai mamunzo pane nyaya pano zvamunoda.
Right, 22 August 2023, and today is a day that we've been waiting for over 5 years. Many Zimbabweans have been looking forward to the day when they would cast this vote that the Zimbabweans are just about to cast in less than 12 hours. And this is just the first step of what we're going to see in Zimbabwe. As I said to you, what you're going to see from the 24th, you've never seen such a thing before. And you're going to see my words coming to life right in front of you, because the vote is just the beginning. What will happen after the election in Zimbabwe is unpredictable, but in a way, it's almost predictable, because ZANU-PF and President Mnangagwa in particular is on a verge of an electoral loss because they have failed to deliver. And if you're watching President Mnangagwa today speaking, he had an interview with Andy Hodges a few hours ago. You could clearly see that ZANU-PF has not delivered. And if you watch Chamisa this weekend, you could see that he's full of promise and young people are fully behind him. He's got a very bright future ahead of him, Nelson Chamisa. And many young people are banking on his win to change their fortune, their personal fortunes. Everywhere I walk, everywhere I go, young people are asking me, Gambakwe, are you giving us promises, fake promises about Chamisa winning? Everyone is just afraid of what is going to happen if Chamisa does not win this election. This is the true picture out there, especially here in the diaspora. People want Chamisa to win this election. People want Chamisa to do very well. And people want ZANU-PF to lose emphatically on the first round. They don't want a second round. They don't want a rerun election. So this is what I'm seeing on the ground everywhere I go. Young people stop me to ask me what is going to happen in this election. So I want to tell you what is going to happen in the election in my view. And the good thing is that all this is going to happen in less than 48 hours. You are going to test my words. So let's go straight into what exactly I expect to happen, especially in terms of the military, the Zimbabwe military. The Zimbabwe military plays a very big role in elections in Zimbabwe. And like I said last week, they've already taken over at ZEC. They're in charge of security there. They're in charge of logistics. In fact, the Zimbabwe military itself formally is a very professional force. But over the past 5 years, I'm sure President Mnangagwa has been working very hard to create parallel military structures, or what the Zimbabwe Democrats Institute calls quasi-military structures. So they particularly point to this organization called Forever Zimbabwe NGO and Heritage Trust. So if you go to their website, you will see a report there that was done. And they also point at how the military has been used in Zimbabwe's past elections. But we don't have to look far. If you go back to the last election in 2018, the soldiers were deployed on the 1st of August. And there is right now a report by the Mohlante Commission, Vice President or former President Kgalema Mohlante of South Africa. He produced a report after the shooting of 6 to 7 Zimbabweans on the streets of Harare by soldiers just before the release of the results in 2018. And I'm going to touch on how this case is going to become very important in this particular election. that particular commission report is going to be very important, especially to President Mnangagwa, and I'm going to show you how it's going to be very important going into this election because it has not yet been implemented. And some of the recommendations from the Mnangagwa Commission relate to how the military deal with elections in Zimbabwe. So let's start with what will happen on the 24th. Tomorrow, people are going to vote. So the Zimbabwean election is one day, which means by 8 p.m., 10 p.m. tomorrow, everyone will have voted. Then people are going to start counting. The problem that we have at the present moment is that both sides have said they are going to sit at the polling stations. So Chamisa has told his people to sit at the polling stations, not to leave until the V11s are posted. They want to do parallel tabulation. The organization called Forever Zimbabwe has said they are going to have a desk at each polling station. So you are going to have two groups, the FARS and the Chamisa people sitting there waiting for the election results. But what is the interest in people sitting in the polling stations? The interest is in the fact that there is going to be, or there is expected to be, widespread rigging. And I explained to you that rigging, it means you either stuff the ballot boxes or you put in your own people, you create people on the voters roll, and then you make them vote when they're not real people, or you force people to vote for you. Those are the kind of things that people are expecting, especially people from the opposition, people from Chamisa's political party. And as I said, Chamisa expects a victory, and Chamisa expects President Mnangagwa to lose the elections. So in the past, when this has happened, so in the past elections, Chamisa said President Mnangagwa lost the elections. When this has happened, the military has stepped in and they have enforced the victory of President Mnangagwa. So if you saw what happened in the last elections, the young people ran into the streets to demand the release of the results. The military came, they shot at people, people died, they subdued any potential uprising. So what Chamisa has done now is he wants those results and he wants those V11s because firstly, he expects to go to court. So this is what Chamisa wants to do. You can see that Chamisa wants to go to court. Because that if he didn't want to go to court, he was not going to be collecting evidence. He's collecting evidence as it stands. He has also said this weekend that he would like to forgive President Mnangagwa. I want to find the correct words here, because as I'm going to go further, I want to show you what will happen to Chamisa, how Chamisa will take command, what will happen if President Mnangagwa, if he loses the elections. Very, very important. And what will happen to the Zimbabwe military if Chamisa wins the elections. So I'm going to unpack that. So Chamisa says he's going to forgive President Mnangagwa. He's going to let bygones be bygones. This is what he says. And if you watch Chamisa's speech on the weekend, you will see that he said those words. However, I think those are just nice words. Legally, everybody in the command structure right now of the Zimbabwe military, that is the Commander-in-Chief, President Mnangagwa, Deputy President Chiwenga, VP, PV Smanda, all these people, they have not answered to the Mohlante Commission report. They have been required by law to do certain things, and they've not done them. And the first thing that will happen if these guys lose the elections is they will have to account. If you look at that report, what it says, the Mohlante Commission report, it's got 4 or 5 recommendations. So let's look at those recommendations, and you understand what this means. Chamisa has got no choice but to follow the law. And here's what the law says. You must hold accountable those responsible for the violence and loss of life. So within that command structure, the 4 of them, or whoever is in that 4, and those 25 or so soldiers who are deployed, they will have to be held accountable and be responsible for the violence and loss of life. Just talking about that before we talk of other things. They have to investigate the circumstances surrounding the deployment of the military on that day. So who deployed the soldiers? What was the order? And what happened to the people who shot? This is something that is related to this election and the past election, because we are likely to see the same thing happening again on the 24th. We're likely to see people going on the street, young people going on the street, and the military will have to react in one way or the other. Then let's look at ensuring adequate compensation for victims and their families. This has not been done. And then reforming the electoral processes to prevent future violence and improving communication between security forces and the public. So these things have not been done. And I've got no doubt that if a new government was to come into power in Zimbabwe, people in the military structure, they'll be held accountable. And Chamisa cannot come into office and keep the current security system in place. So we're talking about the military, the prisons, intelligence, all these guys. Whoever is in that command structure, they cannot expect, and they do not expect, that Chamisa is going to get in office and keep them. So you must understand the feeling and the understanding that they have right now. If someone is in government, when the police is a general, you must understand how they feel now. They know it's their last day today, and then tomorrow they will know as the day ends. It's their last day. They have to face music. And then you have to understand that there is, and I keep talking about the military here, the military is the biggest portion. The army and the Air Force, they are the biggest portion. You have to understand what is the dynamics within the Zimbabwean military. The Zimbabwean military is heavily divided. And I want to unpack how divided they are. There are two portions of the Zimbabwean military. That is the war veterans, the guys who are older, who are generals and they hold ranks. And then there are younger soldiers who just got into the past 10 years and 20 years, professional soldiers. They have got no common interest with the war veterans. The war veterans within the Zimbabwe National Army have been enforcing and pushing the ideology down onto the younger soldiers who want to be professional soldiers. And therefore, if there is going to be any problems in the National Army of Zimbabwe, especially after an election lost by President Mnangagwa, you have to understand that these divisions between the younger professional soldiers and the older war veterans are going to surface. But a young soldier in Zimbabwe cannot and will not be able to do anything without the command of someone with a higher rank. So what is going to happen is, if there is division at the higher levels, one person who is a war veteran can then be able to convince and recruit younger soldiers if they are to go against the total army, because that is obviously going to happen. There's going to be division. If Chamisa was to win the election now and they try to enforce, so I want you to go back to what we're talking about. If President Mnangagwa was to lose the election now, Chamisa has to take command. But the question then arises, does he have anyone in there? Can he take command if they don't want to step down? Is he going to be able to take command? The answer is no. Chamisa has no one there. He's got absolutely no one. And therefore, the only way he can take command is if people follow the law. And if the bulk of the people know that we're leaving, there's no incentive for them to follow the law. So the incentive is for them to not follow the law, which they did in 2018. So what will happen is someone within the military structures will have to enforce the law from within. And this is where we are. That is the level and the point that we are. We're at a point where, if you look at what happened in Malawi a few years back, when the higher ranking soldiers had almost agreed to let the election get rigged, the lower ranking soldiers then said, no, to that. But I think that one was non-violent. The difference is that in Zimbabwe, it's not possible to have a non-violent disagreement within the military. There is going to be fighting and violence. That is no question about it. There's no way that you can go there and disagree with the war veterans and you are a junior soldier. So some sort of disturbance is going to happen there, and I expect this kind of thing to happen within the next 2 to 3 days. I expect a lot of, okay, firstly, I expect people on the streets. If Chamisa is going to take command, I expect people on the street. But before we go to command, let's look at how the Zimbabwe military itself is governed. Obviously, the Zimbabwe Defense Forces Act. And as I said, the younger soldiers, professional soldiers, they would welcome a Chamisa victory. The older soldiers, war veterans, they are going to be dismissed, and they know it very well. So they will try to go against that Chamisa victory. Then, as I said, Chamisa, he's got no one in the military structures. In fact, Chamisa will struggle to go into the military culture, because the military culture is not a culture of talking and discussing. It's rules, it's commands. And if you're firing, I keep telling guys this, guys have been asking me this question over the past week. You don't fire a general with a pen and a paper. You have to make sure that he's in bed or he's sitting there, and you bring 3 guys and you tell him, you're out. You put a gun to his neck and say, pack your things and get out of this office. That's how you fire a general. You don't fire them with a pen and a paper. And this is something that is happening all over the place. And these guys know it. That the point where you've reached, you have to have people inside who can enforce you to become the commander-in-chief. And the culture is not that culture of, we're going to go there and we're going to discuss. And the military will have to be transformed. The Zimbabwe military culture will have to be transformed. It's not a proper culture. Straight from the training of a soldier, the indoctrination, up to the point where a soldier does not know his part in society. He does not know whether he's a member of ZANU-PF or he's a member of the National Army, or where exactly he stands. That is the current point where we are. That if a soldier goes into the barracks, he might end up singing a ZANU-PF song or a liberation song. He does not know what it is that he's really supposed to do. This is where we end up with soldiers that on an election day, if they see people running in the street without any provocation, they can shoot. And this is where the Zimbabwe Defense Forces Act will have to come in. The law says you must be impartial, you must not be involved in partial political activities, and the civilians should take leadership of military. So the command should come from the civilians. So if Chamisa was in a country like Botswana, so the Botswana president was an actor on Generations, I think, one of these SABC soap operas. He was not in the military. Maybe, I don't know if he was in the military as part of national service. But I don't think Chamisa has ever held a gun or taken training or gone to military strategy. So the military culture will have to change. The military of Zimbabwe will have to change. But first, Chamisa has to take command, which means he has to have people there within the military who will be able to, first of all, enforce the law. And once the law is enforced, then you have a situation where everything is put in place and you have new people. That means when you're looking at the current structure that you have in Zimbabwe Security Services, all the way from intelligence, from military, prisons, all the guys that we call JOC or the junta, all those people, it means they won't be there by next month. There's no way that Chamisa can say, let bygones be bygones. Because you'll be back to having the same military culture, the same security culture, the abductions, all the things that you do not want. You're going to have them. And once you're a president and you have that power, you will not relinquish it. And I want guys to understand this, that if you take a president who's very good and give him unlimited power and you give him a blank check to do whatever he likes. After 6 months, Chamisa will be exactly like Mnangagwa. So there's no difference. If you take Mnangagwa here and you take Chamisa and put them here, and then give them equal powers, no control, nothing. After 6 months, they will behave exactly the same. Because that is why you have checks and balances. If you don't give someone rules, they will do whatever they like. So everything that is in Zimbabwe, that is wrong with Zimbabwe, is from the military and is from the security sector. The failure to reform those sectors, hence the sanctions. If you look at the sanctions that are on Zimbabwe, one of the things that needs to be done there is military reforms, media reforms. You need to find the Zamara, the abductions from the security services, people who abducted people during the Mugabe era. But you see, as soon as Mnangagwa got into office, did he find Zamara? No, he did not, because there's no incentive. The incentive must be from the law. Right, so I think I'm kind of getting ahead of myself here. So let's go back a little bit. So 24, Mnangagwa lose the election. There's a very high probability of this. So someone has to enforce it for Chamisa. Someone has to enforce the law, because if they don't enforce, those guys will not relinquish. And then people, if the results are not announced the way people want, there will be people on the street. Either they'll be fighting between people and there'll be injuries. But the end result is that the command must change. So someone will have to enforce the change of command in the military, in the security services. Someone has to say, guys, we draw the line. This guy has won the election. He's now the new commander-in-chief. The same thing that happened in Zambia. What they did is that in Zambia, when Hakainde Hichilema was still campaigning, already guys in the military were organizing themselves, who were not at the top. Because remember, Lungu's guys were quite brutal. So guys at the junior ranks were organizing themselves. So what I told is that you don't fire a general with a pen. It means the day Hakainde Hichilema won the election, someone went and they said, go and catch that guy, and go and catch that guy, and make them sit here, and make sure they don't move from there until everything's in order. And then they were able to fire the guys that they want to fire. But the moment you fire a general, there can be no vacuum. So there has to be someone who replaces that person that you fire. And that can only be done by people in the actual system. You can't do it because you don't know. If I ask Chamisa now who is a good person in the system, they don't know. Don't know who is who in the army. So you need to get good people within the intelligence, within the army, within the prisons. You need to get the good people who know which people are good, who can replace the guys who want to remove. That is how things work. And this is done not at pen point, but at gunpoint. That is how this thing works in the military. Except if it's in America, where you know that when Biden gets into office, he's going to bring this guy. And there's no contestation there because everyone follows the law. The problem we have is the guy we have now does not follow the law. That guy was saying was shooting at 90 degrees. Right now, he's there in the military. Right now, he's sitting there. He shot 6 people in Harare on the 1st of August. And people know him, that this is the guy. They know all the people were deployed, they know how it was deployed, but they do not follow the law. So this is the current situation. Taking the presidency in Zimbabwe is not simple. It's a military exercise, and you have to reform the military. But before you reform it, you have to find people within the system that would take care of the bad apples. And that is where we are right now in terms of transition. If you're going to transition, do not think it's wearing a suit and going to the office. You have a lot of work to do. Chamisa has got tons of work to do. He has to do that in the military. He has to do that in government. Right now, as you speak, someone is loading dollars into a truck at the Reserve Bank. This thing happened in Zambia. The girlfriend of one guy was found with tons of cash in a house, which means they were loading cash as the results are being announced. So a lot of things are happening behind the scenes, and the FAS guys, they are a paramilitary structure for a reason. That means they could counter what I just told you. If someone was to want to enforce the law, instead of the gun being on this guy, it will be on the guy who wants to counter, and your 20 or 30 good guys might end up being history. This is how it works when you're dealing with this kind of transition, because Chamisa doesn't have the people inside the military. And I speak here with authority because I know how the Zimbabwe military works. And as I said, the divisions within the Zimbabwe military have been well calculated, because first, they make sure that they employ very close relatives. So if your father was a war veteran, they'll employ you, they're down there. Then if you're not connected, they'll move you around so badly. So you'll be at Gweru, then they move you to Mtare, then they move you to whatever, all over the place. So you never get enough time to do anything or to organize yourself. Or just before the election, they'll just shuffle you guys so much around that whatever you're planning, one of you guys is now in this place and another one is in that place. And the command remains tight, because the war veterans are very strong within the military, and they're in fact not well liked by the younger soldiers. I think I've been to a number of barracks myself in the past, and it was clear to me that there was that division between the soldiers who are professional youngsters and soldiers that are what I can call war veterans, people who came from the war, or from the bush. Now let's look at, so I said Chamisa will take command, but with the assistance of someone who enforces the law. Don't be an easy process. And obviously, the question then says, what happens to people like the guys I said who are in the command? And sadly, most of them are going to end up arrested to answer to such charges as the Motlanthe Commission report. They will have to answer, because if you're a commander-in-chief or you're a commander of defense forces, and such a report came out and says, find the guy who killed people and make him accountable, and find the people who ordered this thing, and you don't do anything, it means you might end up, depending on what is the atmosphere at that time, you might end up either in jail, or you have to go into exile in some place, or worse still, if there's fighting, you might end up finding yourself meeting your ancestors. So these are the kind of things that will happen, and the guys in the current government, they are well aware of the risks and dangers. And Chamisa himself is also aware of the risks and dangers, because you cannot replace a military government with a civilian government in an easy way. So the military itself, the Zimbabwe military, I do not think, according to the way they are structured now, they are capable of handling a loss from President Mnangagwa, because it's an extension of ZANU-PF, and they will just be starting. Something will have to happen, something very big in the military will have to happen for them to accept a Chamisa win or to handle it, which means either there's going to be internal or external intervention. That is inevitable. If you are sitting there thinking Chamisa is winning an election, you must also accept that that means the end of the military structure in Zimbabwe. So just understand the significance of just what I just said to you now. A Chamisa win means the end of the political culture, but at the same time, the security sector culture is going to end. And when that ends, it ends with everyone. It doesn't end with just President Mnangagwa. So the moment you remove President Mnangagwa, you're going to remove everything that you know right now in the military, in the security, in military intelligence, in prisons. You have to put in a new structure, Reserve Bank of Zimbabwe, permanent secretaries, ambassadors, All these guys, they are part of the basket that is going to be removed by Chamisa. And you have to replace these people. And I keep telling the guys in CC that you don't have enough people to do this. The work ahead of you, you do not have enough people to do it. That is what I keep telling the CC guys. They don't understand it, but they'll see very, very soon what I mean. When I say replacing a system, it's not like replacing a person. Replacing a system, it takes a team. It takes hard work. It takes, Chamisa will be hated by people by the time he finishes this job, because it's such a dirty job to clean up this mess that is 40 years old. You have to do things that you have never done before, which include having to order some people to be taken away and never to be seen again. That is going to happen. Imagine Chamisa, if Chamisa was watching. Let me say you find that guy who shot at 90 degrees and shot 9 people. What is your role as a president when you find that guy? Think about it. Let's say you find the guy that abducted Zamara and killed him. Are you up to the task to make sure that this never happens and the people that did these things are held accountable? Those are the things that you have to do. But you don't have to do only that. You have to deal with the whole thing at once. That is the question that is going to be facing Chamisa, especially from the military side. So let's wrap this up. Let's tie it up. Then I go to comments. So on the 24th, we start seeing the results. Chamisa wins. The military now has a choice. Since they're sitting in ZEC, is Chigumba allowed to announce that result? Then they know that you want. Obviously, the military will know everything. So they can announce something else. But the military actually knows what happened. So they will know the V11s. They're not like what happened in the past. They do have the V11s. So once they know that, the decision will have to be made internally. And as I said, if there are people inside who are resisting, other people within will have to enforce that win for Chamisa. And then Chamisa will have to start putting his own people in the military, in the security services. And that's what is going to happen. So, and then after that, obviously, you have to deal with the current people. So, step by step, you have to deal with these things within the first 14 days. You can't do this more than 14 days. If you go into the runoff, it's worse because people will start gathering and you have a very, very big mess. So I'm just praying that the 24th and the 25th go past without any violence, because if it so happens that this election is rigged and people clearly see that the election has been rigged, then that is your biggest problem that you're going to face, because you're certainly going to see violence. Ordinary people are not going to accept a result that shows that it's a rig. It's an open and blatant rigging. Ordinary people are not going to accept a result in which there is a runoff. I can tell you that for now. People are fed up. They don't want to do another election. So whoever wins here has to do it and finish. So those two outcomes, a loss for Chamisa and a runoff, they will result in violence. And it will trigger a lot within the military structures and the security structures. And we'll be here to talk about it. Let me look at the comments and then I'll review some of the points that I was making here as we go. Right. As I said, even if people Rhodesia Army gave up, if people have spoken, they've spoken. That is the reason one war. We went to war for one man, one vote. Then they should have told us from the beginning that guys don't. Okay, remember the Rhodesian guys, what happened? Mugabe announced a policy of reconciliation. I don't remember any of the Rhodesian guys going to jail. But the current guys, let me tell you what's going to happen. They will go to jail because of things like the Moshante Commission report. They ignored that thing. And this is how they're going to be sent to jail. Secondly, there's so much anger and resentment in Zimbabwe. Do not think that people are going to just watch these guys walking in the street when they don't have power. One of my best friends in Zimbabwe, they always tell me that if you're an MP or a councillor or whatever, you have so much power. You don't queue, you don't walk where people walk. Don't think these guys are going to be allowed to walk around when they don't have bodyguards and all that. They won't be able to do it. The life that they know, today is the last day. You must understand what I'm saying to you now. This is the last day if they lose the election of everything that they know. There are people who have not paid electricity for 20 years. People who don't know how to drive. We used to talk about this. There are people who don't know how to drive since they came from the war. There are people who don't know how to cook their own lunch. They are going to have to do it for the first time after this. And then obviously the army general is quiet. Was he silenced the time he said they went to war to fight in order for Zimbabweans to share? I think you're talking about this man here. I don't think so. He's probably going to be just in as much trouble as everybody else. Because remember, if the command goes up the chain, and the higher you go up the chain, the more your problems become. Then Omega saying, Zimbabwe stop inciting violence. You are telling Army Ozana that what to do when they lose elections. Man, I don't think you understand the Zimbabwe National Army. There's a whole university of the army in Zimbabwe. They learn, they go to school, they're educated. I think most Zimbabweans, they don't understand soldiers in Zimbabwe. These guys are educated. And don't think the 2 or 3 soldiers that you know, that's what soldiers are like. These guys, they know. They go to different countries to study. So the unprofessionalism that you see in the Zimbabwe National Army is not coming from everywhere. It's coming from the few guys that don't know what they're supposed to do, or who know but they don't do it. But very, very smart Zimbabwe National Army. I have no doubt that they will do very well in terms of success as an army. They will do well. When they go to Mozambique, they do well. You've never heard that the Zimbabwean soldiers were wiped out. Or when they went to DRC, they didn't get wiped out. They are professional. They know how to go on a mission and succeed. The question is, why do you, as a military, allow, let's say, something like FARS, which just goes around, or an armed group that operates within your country? And this is where I've been explaining to you about the different divisions in the army and the war veterans and ordinary soldiers. So don't think in a normal country, the army would allow someone to just walk around and have a little army, which is not in the army. Or what happened last week, Friday, where 19 young soldiers, recruits, police, are sent into town to just beat people randomly for no reason. And then you say you arrested them. Do you think in a normal place you would have that? So those are the kind of things that I'm telling you. And remember, when you talk of soldiers in Zimbabwe, if you were in Zimbabwe during the riots or the stayaways, you understand how the soldiers in Zimbabwe behave. Those recruits, they did nothing. When the soldiers go out, there'll be no one on the street, because people know that they'll get a beating of their life. That is exactly how it works. And it's got nothing to do with the assignment, because we're going to be dealing with this thing in 2 days. We're going to be dealing with this very thing I'm saying to you in 2 days. If Chamisa wins this election, you're not going to see any of the generals that are there now. That's exactly how it's going to be. It's going to be a change of structure, totally. Then let's go to Joseph. Did Chamisa get advice from HH's Book of Power? Do you know how long HH was in opposition? I think you can do that research. HH don't just come from nowhere. So he had this groundwork done. And Zambia is a different thing to Zimbabwe. The Zambians are not having a military government. If you go to Zimbabwe and you go to Zambia, it's totally different. The Zimbabwean guys, they are totally from the war, from the bush. Everyone that you see in the hierarchy of ZANU-PF, they're either in ZANU or in ZAPU. Like the war of liberation. When I sit down with people from the military, let's say I'm sitting down with Maim Juru, or I'm sitting down, in the past I sat down with Dumiso Dabengwa. I sit down with people like Matapo. You remember when Matapo was here saying he's going to shoot up people in Harare. When I sit down with these guys, one of the most important observations I've made is that these guys think very differently from us. They're so in touch with the bigger picture, but they do not have the practical ability to make things happen. So that is one thing I've realized about these guys. And that is why Chamisa is going to do so well in Zimbabwe. Because our war veterans, they know what is wrong. But they don't understand that the younger guys that you see, the younger guys in the army, the younger guys that you see like Chamisa, the younger guys you see, the young guys in ZANU-PF, they're capable. That's why you see an 80-year-old guy, he thinks he can do better than his son, who is 40. It's not possible. But they somehow think that they can do it. And then if they die, the whole country will stop. It won't stop. That is where the succession is failing. And that is why you see we have all these problems that we have in Zimbabwe. And when something goes wrong, no one corrects the other. They just keep going. And the country gets worse and worse. Zimbabwe, probably the worst economy right now. But as I was watching President Mnangagwa today speaking to Andy Hodges, I actually almost felt sorry for him because I don't think he understands that Fumvudza. And when you talk of Fumvudza and the challenges that face our country, the inability to withdraw money in Zimbabwe, people fly in an aeroplane to come and withdraw money in South Africa. Do you know how many kids are going to school in countries that we don't know? Zimbabweans who go to universities in countries that are in the middle of nowhere. And this is because the structures and systems in Zimbabwe have collapsed. Similarly, the military is the same thing. You have never seen a military like the one that we have in Zimbabwe, where the politics of 1980 is still the politics that we have at this particular point in 2023. That is the problem that we have in this country. Like you have these all the things that are happening as if you are in Cuba and some of these other countries, but you are in a country surrounded by so much progress, and yet this belief that basic that we're doing, the lack of improvement is okay. That is exactly where we are. They think that if you change anything, if you make things better, you'll be in a puppet of the West. Basically, that's what they think. When President Mnangagwa was asked about FDI, go and watch that interview with Andy Hodges. I don't know whether this is the thinking in our government, that FDI is bad. And I was laughing to say, foreign direct investment is not colonization. So these guys, the way they think, that is the problem that we have with ZANU-PF government at the moment. But it's not that they are bad. As I said, when I sit with war veterans, they're actually very good guys. But you can see that they will not be able to do anything if you put them in office. They will not be able to implement the difficult things that needs to be implemented. Right, so that is all for today. I've really talked a lot here. Let me see if I left anything. And as I said, Chamisa heading for victory. The question is he going to be able to assume command, and the difficulties that are needed to assume command, and the huge number of people that are needed to make this happen. Chamisa is going to need thousands of professionals to assist him. And a lot of people who are currently in the system are going to be out of it, starting 48 hours from now. And if you have not loaded your truck with dollars, you can forget. Some people will be telling us that that person took dollars and went away. And that's how it's going to be. So Zimbabwe Democrats Institute, they put up a very nice report on FAS, Forever Zimbabwe. That is the quasi-military structure that is being used right now to intimidate villagers, to probably do stuff on the voters' roll, to do things at ZEC. And the guys at ZEC, very nice guys, especially the commissioners like Chugumba, they're doing a good job. You can see that when she's doing her work, she's actually doing the work that she's supposed to do. But she's got so much going against it. Right, let's see here. There's so much happening today. And specifically, Chamisa was out. He's very concerned about rigging. And I want to talk about polling agents. We'll see what happens. But I don't think Chamisa will have enough polling agents. I think he's going to have polling agents in at least 50% of the polling stations. I'm worried about what I'm seeing. And where he doesn't have polling agents, or where he has polling agents, he's probably going to have some ZANU-PF guys or some FAS guys as his polling agents. That's quite possible because he didn't train all of them. Some of them are volunteers. Okay, so I think that is it. I really enjoyed talking to you today. Tomorrow we're going to be doing a bit more. And if you want to join here, you can come and join. After the elections, we're going to have a totally different schedule altogether. Gambako Media are doing very, very well, and I appreciate all the support that you guys have given us. As you know, at first, I had a lot of quarrels with ZANU-PF guys. And I was a bit disappointed with Chamisa's guys. And with the fight with Chamisa's guys. But I've forgiven those guys before. And I'm so happy to be on the right side of history right now. Watching all the dreams of the young people come true. And the quarrel I'm talking about is when the CCC guys in South Africa here wanted me to just toe the line. And that is not how we operate. A media house is supposed to be independent. I was quite close and I saw ZANU-PF from up close and personal. And when I went to ZANU-PF headquarters, I saw people. So all you guys who are polarized in Zimbabwe there, you are all people. ZANU-PF guys are people. CC's people are people. Ngonzora people are people. This is the challenge for Chamisa, to build this nation and to make us a people. Not this thing that we've become, that goes to different countries and become a laughing stock. When I was flying to America, I flew through, I think I went to Switzerland, but then I flew to, I can't remember, it was Boston, but everywhere I went, I took out my Zimbabwean passport. There's this thing called being picked randomly. And I kept being picked randomly for searches. Yeah, then I realized the thing that made me different was that I was holding this Zimbabwean passport. Then when I got to Frankfurt, I think Chamisa and some other guys had just arrived, and they were being blocked from going into the waiting area. They were being told to stay this side of where the aeroplanes stay. It's a mess, like the way our young guys are living right now, because of the failure of our government to address basic issues. People are right now flying to the UK to become home care nurses, and they can't find that job. On the streets of every country you go, you're finding out people. Address these issues. People like Chamisa, if you get into office, don't start enjoying the perks. Don't start taking the $40,000 or the $300,000 that are given and forget about the people and the promises that you made. Because this is where our problem is. You cannot build anything as a young Zimbabwean. You buy a bed here. Next month you move, you go there. You have to move again and go over there. Our people are all over the place. And those are the issues in this election. We need this economy to function. And such smart people like the people we have in Zimbabwe, you can't fail to put money in the ATM. This is the thing that I always say to guys. You can't put money in the ATM so that someone can withdraw, go and buy bread, and go home. You can't fail to fix that financial system so that the dollar doesn't crash 1,000 times every 5 years. Those are the issues that we have in Zimbabwe, and those are the issues that a real military needs to solve. Deal with issues impartially, and you will see that the politics will deal with itself. Right, thank you very much. I really enjoyed this, and I think I can continue talking, but let's all take a break. In a few hours' time, we can go and vote for our favorite candidate. And I personally am hoping that Chamisa does well here. As I said, you know, guys, I've always liked Chamisa's vision. So this is the last thing I'm saying here. I really like Chamisa's vision. He's managed to articulate this properly. And I'm happy that young people are seeing his vision. They're following him to the success. And I hope that he does well. And then also everyone does what they're supposed to do, including the guy in the military. Thank you very much and good night. We'll see each other again tomorrow when we're covering this election for almost the whole night. Thank you and good night.
Mama wanna get it, mama wanna get it nice. I know food I miss so, I know food I say, I know kaya, I know kaya.